promoting your opinions or values or stuff like that. And you need to have, then there's like the nitty-gritty stuff, like, you need to have a good correction policy, that if you make a mistakes, because we always, we all do, not always, rarely, but we all do, that you need to be open and honest about how you correct that you need to be responsive to your audiences, etc., etc. So it's really crafted in a way that it has the most positive societal impact, and that it works in the public interest. And this is the spirit that was also built into this new code that was created for the European fact checkers, the EFCSN, the European Fact Checking Standards Network, that was also mentioned by Christopher. And I hope it brought the game up a little bit as well, with some of these criteria being a bit more tight than IFCN's. We'll see. Let's when it's implemented. So we're really trying to, because fact checking has been attacked since it became prominent, and it did become prominent mostly related to the US elections in 2016 and 17 and Brexit. And it has been attacked a lot and proclaimed to be a project of the political left, a project of, I don't know, this or that. These are these interests, which is very far from the truth. So the codes have been made with that in mind, to kind of establish the standards that really tells that our mission and the way that we do things is to get to facts, to verifiable, accurate data and facts, not to, advocate for any political program or party or ideology. That's their main purpose in my mind.
Agon and Tiana, both of you in various sentences before, you said, well, now it's getting a little bit better. Agon, maybe is that also due to fact-checking efforts? Is that the audience taking conscious?
I mean, it's getting better maybe in some particular areas, on some particular topics. I mean, it took a very long time for people to understand, I think, what Russia is doing. I think a lot of people for a very long time were kind of, not very alert to it, or were not seeing the bigger picture, not just in the Balkans, but in Europe in general. And for those of us who were observing this for a longer period of time, something that what happened in Ukraine did not come fully as a surprise. So I do think there is now, especially after Ukraine, there is a bit more of an awareness. I do think, a lot of investment have been made over the last couple of years on capacity building on this topic. I just do think the vulnerabilities are still very high, and the previous panel discussed about, the weaknesses of the media in general, so financial sustainability, oligarchic ownership, all these things really then fuel the problem, because we don't have a healthy information environment in general. And then, in that kind of environment, it's very easy for foreign actors to find ways, as I said, even in the country like Kosovo, where you don't have pro-Russian sentiments, you can still see a certain, patterns. I do think things are not getting better on social media, to be honest. It's that part is more scary, but I do sense some positive changes in terms of you can see, editors are a bit more careful on what they're publishing, or what are the sources. At least in Kosovo, I've noticed that. Yeah.
Sort of a moderated technique to move to like the positive trends, but then you see also how difficult,
hanging by a thread, right?
It's like exactly how difficult it is and how little there is. We have another 15 minutes to go, so I would like to open to questions from the audience. I see a hand getting up to the middle there. If you could bring the microphone is coming.
Well, thank you very much for the interesting discussion. My name is Basar Lukmeta. I'm an editor for the Balkan Investigative Reporting Network here in Tirana. It's a great thing that the work that fact checkers do, but I think we shouldn't forget that 90% of fact checking is done by editors and journalists, because sometimes it's put that journalists are there just to be criticized for their failures, but they're not. They consume enormous amount of information, they collect it, they fact check it. They also contextualize it, and they storytell it. So it's a lot of work done otherwise from the fact checking. It's wonderful the fact checkers actually look at the industry with a critical eye, but we're not here to like put one, let's say, professional on the standstill, because I think journalists in this region do a wonderful job despite the challenges that they face. Another thing is that my fear that, and this is a question I'd like to pose to the panel, of being fact-checking a sort of cottage industry now, because we think about the only way to counter narratives of disinformation from foreign actors or either local actors, it's to have outside fact-checking. But as we know, news is very timely, and from an outside, when the news is published, the effect can be a very bit diminutive in a sense of countering the narrative. So how would you respond to having timely fact-checking from the outside and not from, let's say, the structures, the editorial structures, invest in the editorial structures that already exist? Thank you.
I can briefly just thank you for making that point, because I think it's really important not to kind of pose fact-checking and journalism as being opposed to each other or in collision with each other, which is, I think, a trap that we tend to fall into from both sides. And if I understand your question, it's about being time sensitive and responsive to something that happens really fast in journalism and less fast in fact checking. I think in my perspective, we have vast databases already about a lot of things that are cyclical and that are kind of repeating itself. So you should use us as a source, really, because it's really very easy to use the tools that we use or the stuff that we already went through and debunked to check something that has maybe a novelty appearance, but is actually a recycled disinformation, especially when we're talking about propaganda stuff like this. Like the labs in Ukraine, this is from the war in Georgia. And fact checkers have fact checked it, I think, like a decade ago. So this is something that I would like that shift, to see that shift, that like the media see fact checkers and fact checking websites as depositories of tools that are at their disposal, rather as someone that is kind of criticizing them.
Very important point, I think. There was in the middle, first the lady with the blue jacket. Better.
Hi, I'm Besa Lucy from Kosovo 2.0. I was thinking maybe there's also one aspect to the discussion that wasn't tackled, and I'm curious to see how you view it. I think is the role of our governments and also international actors, and how they also contribute towards creating an environment where information manipulation is easier to be achieved. And that is particularly, I think, done when there's lack of transparency. And lack of transparency also then is strengthened in situations that tend to be concerned with so-called issues of national security, of bigger political agendas and whatnot. And I think sometimes in this work that we do as journalists, as editors, as fact checkers, maybe we should also kind of put the emphasis more on the extent to which governments are actually being transparent about the work that they do, or international organizations or structures. To take point case, the Kosovo-Serbia dialogue, one of the reasons that I think right now there's such an open field for manipulation is because there's this proposal that is being discussed as the final solution between Kosovo and Serbia, but nobody knows what the proposal says. And we've seen it in the context of the past decade in the dialogue. Every time there was a meeting in Brussels, in Serbia there was a different version, in Kosovo a different version. The EU gave a different version of what was talked, what was discussed. So I think we also need to, in order to fight this phenomena, I think we have to also ask more from the governments as well in terms of transparency. And I know ultimately that's what we do on a day-to-day basis with our job, but I think they also have to carry a bit the responsibility of contribution, let's say, towards creating this this kind of climate. So maybe also for Tiana, since you're working, I'm aware also of the work, just how do you go about, do you deal with issues of transparency and looking into what are areas where there's failure of the governments in Bosnia to even communicate on things that then leads to this open kind of field for where anything and everything goes?
I laughed when you said this about the proposal, because we've had this with the constitution, because the reform of the Bosnian constitution is constantly being debated without the public having any insight into what's on the table, which is super frustrating. So yes, we definitely do have that experience. And this connects me also to another thing that was said. This is about the trust in institutions. We unfortunately have institutions that are very hard to trust because they're not trustworthy. And this has posed a very big problem during the pandemic as well, because we have had official sources peddling nonsense about the pandemic. And then when you don't have this anchor where you can like anchor your trust and trust this information to be from a verifiable, credible, science fact-based source, which is, I think, a condition that a lot of us are facing here. It is very hard to do fact checking. You're fact checking a medical doctor that is talking about people having alien origins if they have blue eyes. And he's saying these things in front of a governmental body in Serbia in specific. And this is one of the most influential sources about pandemic in the region, not just in Serbia. And then you as a fact checker are accused of like, you know, overstepping your boundaries because you do not have a medical degree and he does. So this is a similar, it's not a political thing, but it's a similar problem. If you don't have a transparent and trustworthy government, it's very, very hard to have any kind of shared reality about what the facts are and what credible sources are.
Any other question? Oh, yes, you already raised your hand before.
Petrica Racini from IMA Institute from Skopje, North Macedonia. On the 23rd of October, around 30 media outlets, including prominent and organizations whom we deem professional with serious newsrooms, published the news that a battalion or a brigade of Ukraine, which had Macedonian donated tanks and Slovenian donated tanks, was destroyed, according to Russian military sources, namely quoting a video which was published by RIA Novosti. But those tanks were destroyed also at the beginning of October. It was published on this Telegram channel, Militarist. So a logical question is, how can the same tanks be destroyed twice? And what is discouraging and worrying is that, of course, that this news was used for internal political fight in North Macedonia. Putin won over the Minister of Defense of North Macedonia, etc., etc. But some media said, okay, we didn't say this. This was from an official source, as you mentioned, from Russia, so we're just transmitting what they said. Why didn't they bother to fact check and to see? In that video, you see 4 armored vehicles. 2 of them are only tanks. So there is no battalion, no brigade, 4 armored vehicles. And there are no armored vehicles that are on flames, as lots of the titles quoted Macedonian tanks are on fire. So my question is how to bring back mainstream news media outlets who have consolidated solid newsrooms with tens of journalists working there, back to the essence of their profession. You check your facts before you publish them. I think that this is the issue, because we as fact checkers, I mean, we are at our organization are doing something. There are lots of fact checking organizations here, but we cannot have the impact that the mainstream media have. We don't have the sources, the tools, the capacity, nor we are reaching mainstream audiences as they do. So ours is like, you know, that story of, you know, when the lie has circled the world, we are just now tying the shoes and to tell the truth. I think that we should devote thinking and contemplating, even speaking on this issue, because that is the primary fight. We heard a wonderful example from Norway, where you have mainstream media organizations getting together, regardless of their competition, to work together on checking their stories, checking the politician, checking even their owners. I think that this is a sustainable model, because if you have projects from the EU or other donors, today, I don't know, it's very popular to finance fact checkers or media literacy. Tomorrow it would be something else. So these projects will eventually either shut down or transfer into something else. But the real sustainability is having mainstream media organization come back to the essence of their profession. Thank you. Thank you.
Rasha, I think you wanted to react to that.
You raised a lot of issues, and in this room, I see a lot of media veterans that are trying to make the environment in the societies in the Balkans that would actually strive media and to have media that are protecting public interest. But let me give you one example on how actually this cancer is much bigger than the example that you gave. A couple of days ago, TV station with national frequency, which with national coverage in Serbia, which was just a couple of months ago granted another 8-year license to produce false information, to be polite, aired video game shootings, literally video game video, as report from the front in Ukraine. We filed a complaint regarding that in front of the authority in Serbia that exists by the laws. And as the previous interlocutor mentioned, media legislation in Norway and how constitution and laws are actually enforcing professional functioning, I'm sure that media experts from Serbia here will actually confirm that, and also EU confirmed legislation in Serbia is one of the best in the world. However, we have a media situation that I just described as a monster that is eating our society. So how to make the society how to make media more responsible in a society that is decaying, while we are talking about the processes that need a lot of things, and the least that what we need is the fact checking. That's just one of the aspects of it. Fact checking that we are producing, and it might sound controversial because I'm one of the leaders of organization that runs the fact checking operation, and we are giving our blood and whatever needed to be to be able to operate back in Serbia, but that's not sufficient. We are losing this war by far. What we need is education. What we need is a political culture, which for which we don't have the allies with. And this is a equation that a lot of are unknowns. But I think that what we must not lack is a will to try to cope with it, which maybe this conference might come with some ideas. I'm not sure, but what we are hearing so far is that we have a huge problem without that many solutions.
Yeah, Agon, you wanted to react?
I just quickly, I'm not a journalist, but I can, as a consumer of news and more on the commentary side, I do think we cannot solve most of these problems, but some of the ways we can make them better is working with the capacity of media editors in particular to have them have a bit of a broader view of the foreign environment. A lot of the media environment is really focused on just these petty domestic political disputes. So I really think that media sometimes miss the big picture, and there's misconception and misunderstanding even among serious media and editors on what are the aims and goals of these foreign actors. I really think there needs to be work on getting them to understand this, so that will make them more resilient. And I do think that something that important that what Besa mentioned on this issue of securitizing the discourse, it's really hard to tackle that because, when a leader speaks, the media, of course, will transmit that. They cannot ignore a statement by Vučić, but they can or any other leader who wants to just securitize the environment and cause these panic throughout the region. But I do think that media needs to be a bit more aware of why and how, and even choose the language more carefully on how those things are presented. So that's some of the things. But and to conclude, I have a list here. Like I didn't get through it all. The Russian narratives that are friendly, that Russia kind of uses or amplifies in Kosovo. I didn't get to go through them. But one of the key problems we're having right now in the Balkans to counter these narratives is, first of all, because, it's fake news is, by the time people get to debunk, the news has already been circulated, it's too late. But the second key thing is I think it's becoming increasingly difficult for us to counter these narratives with a more pro-EU and pro-West narrative. The key problem in the Balkans is not as much really these days fake news as much as it is bad news coming from the EU. And I'm talking from Kosovo, where we still don't have visa liberalization, for example, and it becomes increasingly difficult to kind of, counter these narratives with something more positive when sort of there are these challenges, or we're not giving enough from the EU and the Western side. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Let's maybe do a last question because we're already running out of time. There is a the microphone is already there, actually.
Thank you. Just as a journalist who produced the news, every journalist who is professional journalist would check the facts before writing. And you should mention one thing, and that's a pressure of speed. Until we investigate and find out and compare the facts, the fake news is out, so we are late. Or fake news is less dangerous for manipulation than taking somebody's tweets and making a story out of it, which is never full story. So we come to the point that what do you do with the fact that is checked? It is late. How much you have effect, where do you publish it? If in the mainstream media or on TV in any country, the fake news is watched by millions of people, how many people would read on one website of fact checkers or somewhere that that's not true? I mean, for us, it's very easy to find out. I mean, I know if you read the statements of the Ministry of Defense of Russia, it looks like more Albanians died fighting in Ukraine than in Kosovo. So it's, of course, that it's fake news. But Algon said one very interesting thing that the people in European Union have to have in mind. Manipulation in the Balkans is homegrown. It's domestic. Foreign interference is more limited. I wouldn't say that there is big foreign interference, but it is produced, and politicians, believe me, are very, very talented. I don't think that they need advices from outside how to manipulate. And those are people who are called friends by EU leaders. Those are people who make cevapcici with EU leaders. And of course, those images of them being friends with EU leaders makes them more popular and more protective from the criticism by journalists or fact checkers, because they are behind the manipulation. Thank you.
A short comment on your first point. This is the thing that I mentioned a couple of times today, and I think that it's important to realize that what's putting you at comparative disadvantage to the producers of this information is that it takes more time to get your facts straight. It takes more time to contextualize things. It takes more time to do good journalism and good reporting than it takes you time to sit in front of your camera in your living room and start talking about world conspiracies. So this is something that really I see primarily as a responsibility of tech platforms to take away this disadvantage and at least even the playing field, if not actively curb those types of sources that are taking away. What we're seeing also is that like legitimate media content is taken and repackaged by these anonymous websites proposing as media, which are actually not media. And then you take a legitimate piece of news that someone took time to produce and put a new headline on that is more clickable and get more views than its original source, which is a credible mainstream media. These are all the things that need to be repaired on the level of our digital environment.
Well, thank you very much. If there's not an immediate question, I would wrap up here and immediately lead to the next panel, which officially should have already started 5 minutes ago. So please, a very warm welcome. Applause to our speakers. And really, thank you very, very much. Tiana, you're losing your pen. So do you, Argon. Well, thank you very much for this panel. And again, it's always a bit of a frustrating thing to start scratching the surface of so many different topics, and then you feel you could and you should go on debating a lot. There is a bit of arrangement. Maybe we let this happen for a second. And oops, I'm doing this for a second time. And we already ask the next speakers to come here, take their place. so we save a bit of time. And now we're 4, so you can choose wherever you want to sit. And there you are. Wonderful. So this is glasses, new glasses. There's a new glass, there's a new glass. There's those that are turned around. Yes. Exactly. Well, that is wonderful. Now I see people are heading out of the room, but there is no break between these 2 panels. We just like keep doing, but there's still a lot of audience, and thank you very much for staying with us. And of course, everybody else, I fully understand that you need a glass of water in between. So please come back if ever you have left in the gym in the meantime. Now, this one is about modern content production, unavoidable condition for the sustainability of professional media. And it's more specifically about constructive formats and solution-oriented journalism, which is really in word part of the title of some of the things you are doing. So this one is also about the digital transformation. It's about new media formats, about modern tools and approaches in our reporting on topics like climate change, like foreign affairs, but also about investigative reporting, but not only, which are all important for the civic development of societies. Well, there's also the fact that independent media are losing audiences, partly in some countries, and the question of what could make them sustainable. And there's also the question of journalism that sees its role in exposing facts versus, is that a versus, or in addition to solution-oriented journalism. Well, let me immediately, to not lose more time, introduce the speakers. We have 2 from the regions and 2 from the Balkans, from Scandinavia. Now I'm getting tired, I'm starting mixing up regions of Europe. Anyway, let's start with Marina Zek, editor-in-chief of Oblakoder from Serbia. We have Vasko Petrevski, who is presenting and producing the TV show 360 Degrees from North Macedonia. We have further on Anne-Katrine Førli, who is an editor at NRK TV, the Norwegian public broadcaster, and Kurt Strand, who is here for the Constructive Institute. Now, you both, I think, Anne-Katrine and Kurt, you share a bit of experience, which you probably need to tell together afterwards, because you have made a bit of way together. Anyway, again, we have spoken about sort of opening statements, but I'd rather like keep it in a way that you introduce a little bit your activities and how they're tied to what we're debating here. And Marina Oblakoder, I have looked at the website and I thought, like, I would love to be able to read Serbian at least. I thought it's just like overwhelmingly appealing. So it's really well produced, I guess. For the rest, I can't judge. Tell me a bit.
Thank you for the kind words. Yes, since we are mainly communicating and addressing a younger audience, mainly young adults, it has to be aesthetically pleasing in order to be appealing to them. But Oblakoder is an independent media outlet. We were founded in 2018. And it was me and a group of journalists who wanted to make a change, because at that time, in Serbia, there were 2 types of media. There were commercial media and there were independent media, mostly focused on research journalism and on very serious journalism formats, but there was nothing in between. So we wanted to change that, and we started writing about culture, which is, there's no space in media for culture in Serbia and in the region, and about young people, about their issues. We started writing about the society and so on. And that's how Blackwater developed. In a very short period of time, we gained a lot of readers, and we figured out, okay, there was a need for this. And since then we have developed, the aesthetic is very important to us. We have a website and a yearly issue, a yearly print issue. And also we had a lot of podcasts, a lot of video shows and so on. So to keep it short, that would be, yeah, the explanation.
Maybe still, Marina, there's one sentence you said when we spoke, that you're mainly writing about cultural and social topics, but you also said the cultural is political. If you could say a few words on that.
Well, the social is political as well. Yes, we didn't want to go into daily politics, but we write about complex issues that are political, because everything that happens in a society is political. Everything that happens with minority groups is political, and especially culture is very political, because that's why it's being neglected. It has a very strong political influence as well.
Of course. Thank you very much. Vasco, you told me about the TV show, and it was also, I absolutely don't want to reduce both of you to the aesthetics of what you're producing. Still, both of you have a reflection on aesthetics are important, and we are telling stories with pictures, and you sort of try to up the game with TV production. Is that?
Hopefully.
Well, look.
Thank you for the kind words. Yes, I'm editor-in-chief of a media outlet that produces several media products, but I believe that out of which the one commercial hour weekly TV magazine deserves to be singled out. The show is currently in its 7th season and airs every Monday night on TV Alsat, commercial national broadcaster in North Macedonia. As I already said, it lasts for one commercial hour and consists of 4 to 5 stories, each of a length between 8 to 12 minutes, covering different topics from hard politics, we cannot avoid that, corruption, rule of law, human rights, marginalized group, environment, to everyday communal problems. Each episode ends with a TV satirical comment. We believe that in the past 7 years, the magazine managed to establish itself as a unique media product in North Macedonia that has become synonymous for high quality journalism. In an overcrowded media landscape dominated by the need for speed at expenses of quality, we have strived to develop a different kind of a product, one that pays equally attention to good television, as you said, and along with good reporting. This was no easy task, but with help and training of experienced BBC producer, we have created a TV format that allows a truly investigative and in-depth reporting of everyday, but also complex topics. We are really thankful to Miss Rachel Wright, BBC producer. And as per video approach, we implement and practice BBC Academia standard of writing to pictures, putting the picture, the footage at the first place. Maybe it's something that is normal as a TV standard in Western European countries, but in North Macedonia, and I think also in the wider region, it is a rare example. Our TV magazine is recognized for its reporting both by the general public, but also by the professional community. The magazine, to be more precise, in-depth investigative stories broadcasted within the magazine have won more than 35 awards in the last 5 years for best investigative stories and journalism excellence. Another proof for our impact in the society and recognition of our work will be, I believe, the EU Investigative Journalism Award presenting ceremony that follows immediately after this panel. 360-degree story and misuse of power and misuse of public funds by high government official is among the awarded stories for 2021. In the meantime, the Public Prosecution Office has opened an investigation on the case revealed by 360 Degrees. The then Secretary General of the government is indicted and a court trial is currently ongoing.
Thank you very much. Very dense presentation. Just I single out one aspect which I introduced also before. I don't think it's reductive in any way to speak about the aesthetics of what we are producing. I would even say we're kidding ourselves if we think that as journalists we're producing things that at least also don't function via the aesthetics. So I think this is a perfectly legitimate sort of approach, and it's a good thing to have a reflection on it. But leading on to court for the Constructive Institute. Well, tell us about the Constructive Institute.
I think first of all, I have to declare myself. I mean, I'm coming from a small country. I'm living there and working as a journalist. We are having very strong government-owned, but not with any government influence, public service media in Denmark. We have a strong welfare state, and as a result of these two pillars, you could say, it's a very strong democracy. And I know that my working conditions is totally different from the conditions that a lot of you sitting here are facing in your daily professional life. So, I mean, for that reason, it could be seen as a bit odd sitting here talking about doing constructive journalism, but at least I will try, and hopefully it could serve as a kind of inspiration of doing journalism in another way, because I think that we have a problem in the industry. We have a problem with a growing numbers of news avoiders, people who don't want to read, view, or listen to news because they find them too negative, they find them too conflicting. We have a problem with declining circulation. We have a problem with declining in trust measure. When we measure trust, we can see it's declining all over in most countries in Europe. So we have to do something. We have problems in this industry, and one of the answers to this could be, it's not the answer, but one of the answers could be doing journalism in a more constructive way. I'll try to explain it very shortly, because I mean, I've been working with this for more than a year at the university in Aarhus in Denmark. But the overall goal with constructive journalism, that is to do journalism that take responsibility for democracy, that try to engage people in the democracy, taking actions in democratic processes, and being, let's say, more active as citizens in the democracy. And it consists of three pillars. One pillar is about that we as journalists always should strive after digging out problems in societies, describing problems. That's what we all learned maybe from the first day at the journalism school. That was at least what I learned 42 years ago when I started.
We went to journalism school
exactly.
In the first place.
On top of this, we should maybe also try to point out some possible solutions to the problems being digged out. The second pillar that is about, remember to cover the nuances, remember to tell about the flip side of the coin, remember to check that facts is really facts and not falsehoods. And the third thing is about engaging people in the public debates, taking more responsibility for the way we debate in the public, taking more responsibility for the tone in the public debate, trying to be kind of very active moderators as media, as journalists, as editors in the public debates. That's what it's very shortly is about when talking about constructive journalism.
So that is, I need to like ask another question on that. That is sort of the theory behind it, but how does it work?
That's a very good. Yes, of course.
It's not only a theory.
That's an extremely good question, and I have some examples. But I know as well that and Katrina,
kind of like the institute now.
Yeah.
What is that institute doing?
The institute is, I mean, that's more researching, and that's researching what is possible. What are the good examples are actually about? What is the theory about how do we build conflicts? How do we solve conflicts? How do we, and so on. And then the Institute tried to help media to change the way they actually do journalism. And there are in Denmark, in Sweden, in Norway, Germany, there are actually some good examples. I mean, this institute has been running now for 5 years, and at least like 50, 60 journalists has been serving as fellows at the institute, trying to learn new ways of doing journalism, trying to be inspirators, ambassadors, you could say, for trying to do journalism in a new way.
Well, I needed that from you because that is the bridge
Yeah.
to Ann-Katrin. Who, Ann-Katrin, you have spent time at the Constructive Institute. What have you done there, and how does that translate into your work as an editor at the Norwegian public TV broadcaster?
Thank you. I will answer that, but first I have to say, as Kurt did, I feel deeply respect for you and your working conditions here, and I'm kind of ashamed on how the conditions in Norway are compared to you. So I acknowledge that the challenges are very different from how we do it in Norway. So this might be a fairy tale chapter 2. I mean, you heard Christopher talking about Faktisk. What I would like to talk about is how we changed our debate. After being at Aarhus, University of Aarhus, we learned a lot more about it, but actually 4 years before we went to Aarhus, we changed our debate program in the big channel in NRK, the public broadcaster. And what we started feeling was that we actually made the conflict bigger. We were actually increasing the polarization between the people that we had in our debate shows in the main channel. And we felt so badly that we thought, could we actually do this in a different way? So we kind of changed the rules for debate. We come up with a new format, and we said to everybody, you're not allowed to criticize the other one. You're not allowed to come with accusation, suspicion. You're not allowed to come with your prepared one-liners. Here we want you to listen, because we found out that the politicians didn't listen. They were just preparing their next one-liner. And then the host was actually leaving the show. So the politicians had to have the responsibility for making this a constructive debate. And actually what we saw was that they did manage to do it different. It was like what we had seen in the green room or in the sofa before the big debates on our TV channel. We saw that they could actually speak like normal persons, and they actually did it on TV. So that was interesting findings for us to see that it was actually possible to do it. And yesterday we actually did launch a new season of the program, which we called Do You Agree was the first season, and then the next one is Disagree. And what we want is people to disagree in a better way, because we want disagreements. We want them to have different solutions, to have different perspectives, but we want them to do it in a different way, more proper way, you may say. And well, this won't solve the whole thing. We still have these big debates. People are quarreling and yelling a bit, but this is something we do in addition to the other debates, and we see that people love it, and especially the young people, because as Kurt said, we have a problem also in Norway that the young people are avoiding the news, and it's increasing. So we see that the young people, they like this way of debating much better, also when it comes to solution and solution-based journalism. And we also see that the young people are much better in debating in this way.
Vasco, you're producing TV also, and you're producing a show. Is this like, is this imaginable to sort of translate into your work reality?
I have to say that it is very interesting. I found it very, very, very interesting. And I have to also acknowledge that, unfortunately, in my country, the debate TV shows are very polarized one, unfortunately. And what we can see as a tendency is pushing completely opposite of what you said, completely different. I mean, pushing the interlocutors, the interviewees, the guests in the show to fight, if not physically, but rhetorically, really.
Yeah.
And maybe there is one common thing. It seems like in our shows also that there is no a journalist who is a host, because he or she just leaves, you know, the guests to really fight rhetorically, and it's completely different. I found it very interesting, and I've been starting to thinking about the possibility of maybe copying or at least trying to do something similar. So yes, definitely I like it.
I have to admit that we put the host back again in this season. And because we saw that we needed someone to make them do it better and to help them. And this time, the host, that is a very experienced TV host, used to have the big debates also in our elections every time. And she now actually tried to do it very differently. And she was inspired by mediators, negotiators, psychologists. Can we try to find out why you disagree? Can we try to sum it up and see here you disagree, but here you do agree? So, okay, can we go further on? Can we now? So she was kind of a host that didn't make the fighting go harder, but she was doing the opposite. And actually, it's very interesting to see how the debate is very interesting to follow, and it's much more interesting to follow their arguments and understand why they do disagree.
Now, Anne-Catherine and Kurt both have used this word solution-oriented somewhere in their speech, and Marina, this is a word you used also when we spoke earlier, but you also mentioned the educational component. Could you connect the dots between what is for you solution oriented and what is, or is there a difference between solution oriented journalism and the educational component, as you said?
Yes, thank you. Yes, when we spoke, I said that one of the main components of Oblak Order is that it has the educational component in our content, because we believe that's a component that has been lost. In mainstream media, it has been lost. Everyone has forgotten how powerful, because now we're not using some strong words that were popular in the 20th century. We're not using propaganda, but we know what the strength of media is. So the educational component is very serious, and we should never forget it. Also, the solution journalism and educational component are both part of something that's crucial for journalism. Journalism in its rooted the way it should be. As you said, why we studied journalism, because of this, not because of clickbait that was mentioned before today. So we write about issues, about phenomena that affect young people and people living in Serbia and the Western Balkans and Belgrade. And we try to not only map the issue, but also propose a solution. You can do it very simply. And I think it should be an integral part of every article and every long read article ever published. So I don't think it's something new. I think it's something that we have rediscovered, because we have figured out what we were doing was wrong. So this is what we do. I like to say that as Oblak Order, we bridge the gap between mainstream media and investigative journalism. We are somewhere in between. We're trying to educate these young people. We're trying to empower them. And when you said, Mr. Strand, when you explained everything, you explained basically what we do, because we try to activate people, to empower young people to become, again, in a very depressed society, active people, to take part, to see that they can do things. This is what we do. It's a very hard job, because sometimes you yourself don't believe because of the situation that we are in as independent media outlet. But I think it's something that must be a must and something that we should not forget. So, and we're not dissecting everything that we do. So the educational component comes from these solution-oriented articles and so on.
Rather conceptually than
Yes,
in
it's
terms of.
when we talk about these terms, we can, define them, but in the practical field, you do basically everything all at the same time. So, yeah.
Thank you, Kurt. Yeah.
But I think you're totally right, because a lot of the components in constructive journalism, solution-oriented journalism, whatever you call it, is actually going back to the roots of what journalism is about. I mean, that's a very, very large part of it. But when it comes to the political debates, I would like to tell about the way politicians they see this, because if you ask them, why do you always have this very hard tone when you talk to a political opponent? Why do you always try to find the negative sides of your opponents? Why don't you not come up with your own solutions to a certain problem and so on? Then they very often said like, well, this is what I know you expect in the media, because if I don't talk like I do, then I won't get any airtime. Nobody would listen to me in the media, because the media, they want us to fight. So, I mean, we have a responsibility in the media to maybe change the public debate. Of course, we should show that there are different views. There are, I mean, that's why we have different political parties in most countries, right? But sometimes we should try to turn it around, and instead of starting with where do you disagree, we maybe should start with where do you agree? Can we find some common ground to solve some problem? And the interesting thing is that we had at the Constructive Institute, we have been doing some surveys in Denmark, in Britain, and in Germany. And when people are being asked how they think about public political debates, they dislike when politicians don't answer what they've been asking about. They dislike when they are yelling at each other. They dislike when they only talk about negativity, and they dislike if they don't come up with the solutions. And we have tried to arrange some meetings. We had a general election in Denmark last week, and we have arranged a couple of election meetings, and it has been a story itself that now someone is trying to do the political debate in another way. And when I talk to colleagues just here after the days after the election, there's a feeling that the tone in the election campaign has changed. The tone is less negative than it used to be. There's a more tendency to actually some politicians saying, like in a public political debate, well, interesting what you said right now. You had an interesting argument. Maybe I could see myself being part of an agreement on how to solve this and so on. And actually, one of those who had been based, I think we talked about it when we talked at the phone. One of the politicians being seen from my point of view being number one in actually admitting that someone then himself could have actually good ideas as well. He had an enormous, he had a great election. I mean, he had more votes than expected, and more votes than expected in the opinion polls up to the election. We don't know if that's because of his new approach to the debates, but we'll never know.
Oscar, you wanted to react to that?
If I may share our experience from North Macedonia. Back in 2013-14, there was no single debate show in our country. It is a dark period for our democracy. Unfortunately, all mainstream media were under control of one center of power, one political party, and there wasn't any debate political show. Afterwards, one by one, I think that at the present moment there are, I don't know, maybe every night 4 to 5 debate shows on each TV station with the national coverage, which is too much. It's an inflation of debates. almost all the same interlocutors and guests are circulating on the debate shows. And I'm following the numbers from the Nielsen People Matters, and it is obvious that the debate shows are losing its viewers. And from my perspective, I think it is maybe because this aspect of polarization, having almost same guests, a circle of I don't know how many, 50 to 100 people that are circulating in the debates. And every night 4 to 5 debate shows. It's too much. Something needs to be done, and I expect that one by one now these debates will be shut down because this is a logical and normal step forward from my perspective.
It's inflationary, of course, when there's so much just of the same going on. I saw, Anne-Catherine, you nodding to that, and maybe you wanted to react to that.
No, I was just, from my point of view, also we have service that people are saying they are tired of how we usually do these debates when people are talking into each other, just accusing each other of coming with lies and everything. So of course you need fact checking also after those debates. But I think people are saying to me, okay, but those constructive debates, aren't they very boring? Isn't no good TV? Well, actually, I think it's opposite, because it came out very different. If you try to understand why are you saying this very different from me, then there will be some moments that are very different from what we're used to see in American TV debates, where they do all these one-liners and everything is very sharp. And then what we actually want is debates to give us some more knowledge. We want to be wiser. And if we feel wiser, then okay, now I can make up my own opinion about these things. So, but I mean, this is not a solution in how to do it. But I think if we can talk more about debates, doing it different, I think it will be very interesting.
I could add that in Denmark, we have 8 regional TV stations. They are all owned by the state. They all, except for one, have declining numbers when it comes to the viewers. And the one not having declining numbers is a TV station who had defined itself, as they put it, the first one and only constructive journalism TV station. And they really try to do stories every day that has a constructive approach, that has a solution-oriented approach. They do political debates in another way, like inspired from Norway as well. And the reactions from their viewers is actually, we like this. We like this much more than what you did before this. And the TV station is situated at an island in the middle of Denmark. And at the same island, there's a regional newspaper. It's one of the only regional newspapers in Denmark who has rising numbers instead of declining numbers, because they have taken in constructive journalism as well. That's their own explanation. We don't know, because it has not been measured
it's sort of the
scientifically.
constructive island.
But I mean, at least they try, and that's what I think we should do. I have to repeat myself. This is not the solution of a business, of a media business in big troubles, but it's one of the answers. I think so.
And it seems to be working, at least to a certain extent. I'm not saying to cure all society's ills, no, but at least to make good content, appealing content, and even to increase sustainability. I just want to speak go a bit more into depth into this idea of solution-oriented journalism. And you also mentioned it, Marina. If you are reporting on a story, whatever social problem, coming up with a solution as a journalist is something which is, for somebody classically trained journalist, something rather counterintuitive. And also, I think we all agree, we all know as citizens that there's not to every problem one single solution, but there's a lot of them, of course. Like how you go about to you suggesting like this could be solved this way, and how does it function?
Well, first of all, if you research the topic, you see how things can be changed, definitely. You see different practices from all over the world. So there is definitely a big difference between what Vasco and my perspective is and yours is, because if we have the most polluted city in the world that day, we cannot go around it talking only constructively. We have to point fingers, even if I say we're not a political magazine, but we have to. So in that, I'm just coming back to the same origin. You go deep into the story and you try to communicate with your audience. One of the problems in the world, not only in the Western Balkans, is a scientific phenomenon that has been described as a news finds me phenomenon. It describes the media habits of young people who are so overwhelmed by so many programs, so much content, that they believe that they are informed only by scrolling their Instagram or their TikTok, and they're not going to any websites, any news website, they're not reading anything. And this is a serious issue that we should start recognizing and tackling. With our content and with our solution-oriented journalism, we are not only writing the stories, but we're trying to approach these audiences, trying to make them interested, trying to engage them. And for us, because we have started very locally in Belgrade, and we would like to expand, but it's not possible because we don't have the capacity, but we have readers from all over the Western Balkans. They like to communicate back. So this is also an important feature that maybe only radio outlets are still nurturing and the rest have forgotten. You have to let them talk to you in a sense. So our audience talks to us. That's also part of the solution because we learn a lot from them and we learn a lot of stories, and then you have trust, and then that's something completely different. You don't see them as an audience, you see them as a community, and then you're solving things together. So that will be a part of it.
How do they talk to you? If there's, I mean, there's you mentioned radio. There is, of course, everybody has this idea of radio programs where people phone in. Like how do practically?
Very differently. We use Instagram as our main channel, but I have to say they go more directly to the website and they don't read articles through Instagram. They only communicate with us through Instagram. So you have DMs there, messages, they add some of us, they comment very loudly, and sometimes they even call us through Instagram. So if they want to say something, and we're very open to all of that because we need that feedback. And the best thing is that when you do a very serious story, when you write about something that you feel about deeply, and this is for me personally as a journalist and as a woman, is the position of women in Serbia. And then so many women directly write to you and share their stories. And that's how you find out about new things. So yeah, Instagram, email, we're very responsive, so they can always reach us.
Marina, you introduced this by speaking about this superficial sort of news consumption we're having, scrolling to this through well, social media accounts, but also through quality websites, quality news websites. We're still just scrolling through them and feeling somehow informed. Well, in reality, we don't know a thing. And do you manage to make people read like the longer features you're producing?
Yes, that's why we have a yearly edition, because I mean, everyone is going online and we went offline. So we have a yearly edition. I have it in my bag so I can show it to all of you. But we're trying to make young people read because they don't have the attention span. And also it's very interesting. If you target a topic that they're interested in, they will read through the article, even if it's 10 pages long. They will listen to a podcast that lasts for 5 hours. So you need to listen to them. We are so closed up in our media outlets that we're not communicating with them, and that is our job. So if you choose the topics they are interested in, they will read. There's no specific solution, no magical solution, just really and honestly listening to your audience. I think for us, it's a good thing that we are targeting a young audience and we are young people as well. So we know, and yeah, also people approach us live when they see us in the city. So that's
So no
another thing.
magical solution, but no fatality that people can, like in the world we're living in, people like structurally can only be superficially informed.
No, and young people are very interested. They want to be engaged. They want to be asked. And most importantly, they especially like reading stories about themselves. So if it's a mental health issue topic, they will read about it if they feel that's something that's addressing them. If it's about, I don't know, pollution, air pollution, they will read about it. They won't skip it. But there's also another thing that you have mentioned, the aesthetic of it. You have to show it aesthetically, because a difference that's happening right now is why social media companies are stronger than our companies. They have more money, they have more technology, they have more research about manipulation, about attention, and we do not have all of that. So we need to maybe steal something from this, learn something, and then apply it to our content. Not, I don't say we need to change, but we need to talk about the aesthetics of our websites, how we are presenting them, what are our key components that we're bringing to them, and how we're attracting them. And if we attract them, they will stay if you have a good story.
Very, very hopeful message. Still, at the risk of doing exactly what we're talking about, but what we should sort of not talk, which is to push for disagreement for the sake of disagreement. But let me be a little bit the devil's advocate here. You say that even in polls, people say that they don't like all this negativity anymore and all this yelling around anymore, and they want more constructive and more hopeful content. And then they are in the intimacy of their phone and they scroll through the news, or they in the intimacy of their living room and they're on their remote control. And it seems they want to see blood on the wall. They want conflicts. They want sort of this gladiators going into the arena. That's how they want politicians to be. Well, you're saying that politicians only do this because they think the media wants them to do that. I'm just not that sure that we're so good.
Of course, there's a risk when you ask people, how do you think about the way politicians they are debating?
I want
of course, there's a risk that you get, let's say, kind of political correct answers. That's clearly a risk. But the numbers they are quite high. So even if you remove, let's say, 1/4 of it, you will still have a majority saying like they want it in another way. The experiences we have in Denmark as well as in Norway, they're showing that people they like to get it in another way. And it's maybe we can boil it down to be about being ambitious about what we are doing when we are doing, for example, political debates in radio and television. I myself, I have been anchoring radio and TV formats for more than 35 years. I don't know how many debates I've been doing with a concept like we invite person B and person A and person B. We know that they disagree very strongly on a matter, and we know that they're both very good debaters. Meaning that they could really do some entertainment in a studio. Yeah. So we will leave, let's say, 10, 15, 20 minutes for this debate. And I don't know how many times I have finalized debates like this, saying like, well, I can hear that we will not get any closer to this tonight. But thank you very much for joining us here. I'm sure that the debate will continue another day, another place. Thank you very much. I mean, what's the outcome of this? What's the ambition with this? Otherwise than others only, but I mean, of course, we filled out some minutes that we had to fill out, but maybe that was it.
Yeah, we probably produced what was often considered a good chunk of television, and it's very engaging, and yeah. And Katrin, you.
Thank you. But because it's important for me to say that for me, constructive journalism is critical. I mean, when a colleague of mine was writing a book about constructive journalism, she called it critical constructive journalism. And that's because if we don't have investigative journalism, if we don't have journalists making very good stories about the problem and who's responsible for it, if we didn't have that, we couldn't have constructive journalism. I mean, constructive journalism is kind of fulfilling the picture, kind of using both eyes. Now we have this problem. Everybody knows this is a big problem. Okay, so the question for us is, so what now? What do we do now? And then we can have these constructive debates talking about, we know there's a problem. Okay, so what do we do? And if you have solutions, as you said as well, we have to be critical to the solutions. I mean, it's not like I have a solution, then the problem solved.
Yeah.
So it's
recipe sort of.
exactly. So it's very important that as journalists we are critical. That's, I mean, that's the bottom line. And then we have to fulfill the picture, because we have a tendency to just take out what's the problem, and we don't see all the other aspects of life and society. So that's why we want to do something else in addition to the investigative journalism.
Vasco, Marina already mentioned environmental topics, and I of course know that this is a very, very important topic, well, worldwide now, but specifically here in the region, for having among the most polluted places on this continent. I'm just wondering, how do you go about, what's the tone of reporting on environmental stories currently?
In North Macedonia.
In North Macedonia, of course. Well, in your show.
I think that if it is not the most challenging chapter during accession negotiations of a candidate country, North Macedonia is not aspiring, it's still candidate country. They have recently started accession talks with the EU. Then it is maybe the most expensive chapter in terms of needs of investment in different areas related to the environment. And I think that this assumption will be definitely confirmed in the case of North Macedonia as well. There are a lot of environmental problems. Unfortunately, we in North Macedonia, but also in the wider region, we still cope with more basic issues related to the real functional democracy. So I think that unfortunately we cannot talk about having systems of a real functional democracy. So in North Macedonia, rule of law, fight against corruption, the independence and the efficiency of a judiciary are the most pressing issues at this stage. Environment, it is an issue, but not among the top issues. So we regularly cover those issues. Unfortunately, Skopje regularly during the winter is among the most polluted cities in the world. If not the first, then in the first 5 or 10 on the world list, which you can imagine is a good basis for stories.
And which also makes it a sort of pressing issue, doesn't it?
Absolutely. As we are approaching a new season and having in mind at the same time the energy crisis, unfortunately, I think that this might be one of the most polluted winters for the citizens of the capital of North Macedonia, which is a sad thing. Of course, we are here to point to that problem in advance, to try to raise an alarm. But also at the same time, we need to face the situation in which the question on whether there will be enough energy during the winter is the first one. And then what kind of a fuel you're gonna use comes. Unfortunately.
You nodded to
Yeah, because the issues are similar. So if Skopje is not the first, then Belgrade will be. So yeah. But I don't know, for us, that's one of the main issues that we want to address to a younger audience, that they have to say no to it, definitely, because it's something that affects everyone. So it is everything that you said are pressing issues that we're facing also in Serbia as well, is the same thing. But for us, the environmental one is the one you cannot believe the most, because it affects everyone, no matter how powerful you are. So it's a very pressing one.
Is it a pressing one in coverage, like how you conceive the idea of the Constructive Institute in Scandinavia? One, because I think it's one of those issues where you sort of can come up with suggestions for solutions. I'm just wondering, like how in the approach of constructive journalism you approach environmental issues and suggest various solutions. So how do you go about?
I mean, when it comes to, for example, climate coverage, it could be easily. It could easily end up with me thinking, listen to the radio, watching television, reading an article in a newspaper, that I would tend to say to myself, well, I think I'll commit suicide now because everything is going totally wrong and there's no help anywhere to this. But I mean, if you do journalism and try to find the good examples, trying to find people who actually try to find solutions to the climate challenge, trying to change their transportation behaviors, trying to change. I mean, we had a story in Denmark some months ago about different municipalities. Why do they have? Why is all buses driven on electricity in this part of the country and not in this part of the country? Why not in all of the country? And I mean, if they can do it here, why can't they do it there? And so on. And we had another story with, it's not about climate, but about doctors, for example. We talked about that earlier today. Even though Denmark is only covering 44,000 square kilometers of the earth, I mean, it's a very small country. There is outskirts and there is problems having doctors in the outskirts of the country. And then I had a colleague a couple of years ago, he asked himself, I wonder how they do that in Norway. I mean, Norway being so big, so long, with thousands of kilometers from the one end to the other end of the country. How do they do this? And he traveled to the northern part of Norway and found out how they attract young doctors to move their families, to move themselves, and to actually solve the problems having doctors on hospitals and local clinics and so on. And I mean, it was just copy and paste and doing exactly the same. And now it's about to be solved in the same way in Denmark. And I think that constructive journalism is very much about copy and paste, because there's a lot of good ideas around in the world. I mean, BBC, they have a fantastic concept on the BBC World Radio saying BBC fixing the world. Trying to go out in the world, see, we have a problem here in Britain. Could we find somewhere else in the world where they actually have solved this problem? And can we use that solution here as well? I mean, that's a great concept.
That's a great statement. We come exactly to 15 minutes before the end of this debate. And we, of course, this is also about like ideally copy pasting solutions you're suggesting.
May I just
media to the extent of the possible.
May I just add one thing?
Please.
If you want to know more about this and concrete examples, especially on debates and new debating tools, there's this little book called Listen Louder, and you can find it at the Constructive Institute website. It's constructiveinstitute.org. It's very easy to find, and then you search for Listen Louder, and you'll find this. You can get a free PDF copy of this book. It's written by me. It's written by Anne-Katrine. It's written by a colleague from the Danish reading newspaper Politiken. It's written by a colleague from The Guardian and from Süddeutsche Zeitung. And it was presented at a conference in Bonn back in June. And also at the website, there's a lot of footage from that conference in June in Bonn with a lot of discussions on how to do constructive journalism. If you want to know more, if you want to watch more about this. So that's
perfect. As we're speaking about copy pasting, I think it's perfectly legitimate.
Exactly.
Mention the website.
Yeah, I also wanted to say an example. We're doing now a series of articles about the air pollution, and you can find someone who does it better than you. So we have partnered up with an institute that investigates renewable energies. So we're writing with them about an act that's very important about air quality in Belgrade. So you can either do that, find someone who is an expert in this field, partner up with them, and then try to come up with different solutions that they know more about than you do.
But that's
Very short. Yeah, very short.
No, it's correct, because that's
both,
what leading debates is all about.
both colleagues from Denmark and Norway used to work with the public broadcasters. And this is very important when we talk about the way they approach the topics and the constructive journalism and the solution-oriented journalism. Unfortunately, in my country, the public broadcaster is very weak. And I think that we should not forget that aspect as well.
Which ties to political culture, which ties to state institutions, and so on, of course. But still, 50 minutes left. I would like to open and you were the first one, the fastest one, actually. Could the microphone be brought to the gentleman here?
Short observation, short question. I mean, it's wonderful. And talking about constructive and solution-oriented journalism, but I have a question for Kurt. And I'm referring to Anderson's tale, Emperor's New Clothes. In this part of the world, we love to have the role of journalist exactly like the little boy who told the audience that the emperor has no clothes. But I mean, how to avoid the risk of becoming a butler to dress the emperor and to show where to buy the clothes?
That is, as Anne-Katrine put it, that is to remember the word critical. I mean, we should not do constructive journalism without having problems to be constructive on. I mean, we should dig out problems. We should show the problem. What are the main problems in society? What do we need to be discussed in the public, and so on. And then we could add some solutions on this. But of course, we should be as critical as possible in every aspect when we are doing journalism. Without that, it doesn't make sense.
Ina was first.
Hi, thank you guys. Very interesting talk. I think I'm picking up on something Marina was talking about the young generation and how this question of how the news comes to you. When we create this really interesting in-depth stuff that's not just people yelling at each other or disaster journalism and has solutions, and we want to reach the younger generation, I don't know about you, but my very small news outlet, Unbiased the News, we're relying a lot on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, places where the algorithm can change from one day to the next, where all of a sudden, where you had a very active and engaged commenting community, they disappear overnight because you did something wrong. And I suppose even with TV, you're trying to reach, in some cases, their YouTube. So how are we supposed to cope with this young generation that is not really that critical about what the algorithm does from day to day, doesn't maybe miss you if you disappear from their feed, and still get this in front of them, especially when today, now you can buy a check mark. I think this also really disfavors minority languages, small countries, small independent outlets that can't keep up with the, now it's $8 a month, now it's $25 an ad, et cetera, et cetera. So how are you guys coping with that challenge, or are you trying to find other ways to reach your audiences?
Well, yeah, as I mentioned, we try to train them in a way to go directly to the website, which is the thing that they are doing. This is why I connected all of this to the aesthetic. You have to make them. We also at one point made an Android app, so it would be more user-friendly for them. You try to approach them in any way as possible. And we have, for example, for Instagram, so we wouldn't get dropped and lost from their feed, we have a strict strategy that we publish 3 posts every day. That's like, even if, I don't know, our office is burning, we are doing this. So you have to do this, and also you have to ask them questions, which I already mentioned, but you have a lot of features that you can use through social media. We like using the poll part in Instagram stories and so on. So you ask them questions, they answer and so on. This is how you engage them, and how the thing when you become obsolete never happens. If you are lost, they want to reach out to you. We had a type of an attack of our Instagram page. It was a month ago. All of our followers were very, very upset because of this. So you have to maintain contact with them, definitely, and also show them that the website is their first address, definitely. Yeah, hope this answers.
There was one other question, Valeriana there, and John then afterward.
Thank you. For me, this idea of constructive and solution-oriented journalism is very interesting, and I would like to know, maybe on a practical level, is there space there for media outlets and journalists to build alliances and coalitions with other actors in society? For example, if we consider environment, I don't know, maybe with academia, with NGOs, civil society, interest groups, diaspora, and so on and so forth. And how can outlets do this, and how can they be supported, maybe even from donors, to build these alliances? And then maybe they will also translate into better relationship with audiences as well. Thank you.
That's part of what it is about, isn't it? Good.
I have an example from Denmark where 5 local media in a region of Denmark, they made a kind of campaign up to local elections 2 years ago. No, 1 year ago, because they have discovered that especially young people between 18 and 25, they tended not to vote because they couldn't, I mean, what is this about? Can I mirror myself into what is being discussed in a local election campaign? And the 5 media, which all are competitors on a daily basis, they decided to go together and really do stories, really trying to explain for younger people what this is about, why it was important for them to be part of this election as well. And again, you cannot be sure because they have not had resources to do qualified research after the election, but they could see that the number of young people participating in the election in that part of in that region was higher than in other regions, and it was significantly higher than it was at the election 4 years earlier. So maybe it was because of that, maybe it was because of the focus. We don't know actually, but again, you can try, and maybe it would work, maybe it would not work.
Katrin, you wanted to say something there.
Because explainers are also a very important part of constructive journalism, and also being in contact with the public. So in NRK, we have started what we call NRK Replies, and that is actually an agreement with a lot of scientists and people that really know. It started during the COVID, where we saw that the audience had a lot of questions and we couldn't answer all the questions. So we were making appointment with a lot of academics and scientists, and they were coming to us, answering a lot of questions, and the audience were writing. And we now use it, of course, for our website, but also in our TV news, radio news. We use the questions in making better journalism for our audience. And I think that's an important part of constructive journalism, is being in contact, as you said you were, with your audience as well. It's a very important part of it, not just sitting up there trying to, and it seems like we all know the answers, but because we don't.
So you're done over here, please, the microphone. The second row, the gentleman.
Thank you very much. I was very interested in this session and to learn about solution-oriented journalism because I write for The Economist magazine, and we've been doing this for decades because we very rarely identify a problem without trying to offer some kind of solution, maybe not in the shorter news stories, but certainly in things like briefings that we do, we look at that. I'd like to make an observation and then ask a question, particularly to Kurt. When you go into solution-oriented journalism, there is a price to be paid, and that price is any pretense at objectivity. Now, we accept that. We don't pretend to be objective. We're opinionated, and we're opinionated even within our news coverage. But is that an acceptable price to pay?
The director of the Constructive Institute in Denmark, he is also a former director at the news department at the Danish Broadcasting Corporation. So he has been director for me when I worked with the Danish Broadcasting Corporation, and we had some 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago, we had a lot of discussions on objectivity, because I claimed that we should stop talking about objectivity. We should admit that, of course, when we do journalism, we are subjective because we pick and choose, but we have, of course, to do it in a decent way. We have to be fair, we have to be balanced and all that stuff. And then we met again at the Constructive Institute. He was a director there as well, and I was a fellow. And we restarted the discussion on objectivity because he still claims that you can do constructive journalism and still be objective. And I say, I'm not sure that you can do that because, as you just said, there's I mean, when you start pointing out specific solutions, then you tend to be maybe a kind of a activist in this. You maybe would be seen as a campaigner for a specific solution. And I think that's okay. But you have to be very open about it. You have to be very transparent about it. You have to say to your readers, just as the regional newspaper I mentioned in Denmark earlier in this panel, they are, for example, we have a bridge between two parts of Denmark, the Great Belt Bridge, a 20 kilometers long bridge connecting two parts of Denmark, and it costs like in euros, like 40 euros to pass the bridge when you come in your car, for example. And they have a campaign and they argue that if we should have more growth in our part of Denmark, it's necessary that it's free passing the bridge. It's free to go with your car on the bridge to the other part of the country. And I mean, they are campaigning this, but they are very open with this. And they say, we have taken a stand in this discussion, and we are not trying to cover the arguments against this because we have this stand. I think it's okay as long as they are open about that. But of course, that's a very important discussion. Where are the limit for when is it not journalism anymore? When is it opinion? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah, because I think that's the reason why we in NRK didn't call it solution-based journalism, or we decided that constructive journalism is have a content that is kind of, we have nuances, we have debates, we have dialogue, we have a lot of things in that, and solution-based is only a small part of it. So because I agree with you. I mean, there are a lot of problems if you are going on just solution-based journalism. And for me, constructive journalism is a lot more, and solution is a small part of it.
There is another question here in the second row. Sorry.
First of all, I'm Nursun Erel from Turkey. First of all, a small comment. If you were in my shoes nowadays in Turkey, you would be feeling very optimistic about your future as a journalist. And then secondly, as a follow-up for Vasco's mention, a question for Catherine. Since the television is a public-owned one, don't you have any rating pressures? And what about the other private-owned televisions? Do they feel the same, or they are not that courageous to have such a radical shift in accordance with the debate programs, for example? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You're right. We do follow our ratings, and we do follow them very, very much. So we are afraid of that people will not watch our debate programs. And what I told you about the change in one of the debate programs is in addition to, it's not instead of the other debate formats. So we do it as a kind of experiment to see if we can do it different, but we don't take out the other ones. We're not that brave. So in a way, you're right. We do both in a while. And our TV2, it's our main kind of commercial TV station in Norway. They are not doing that much debates, but they are during the election, of course. Then they have lower rates than we have. We have in Norway, we have 80%. Yeah, it's too much. Never. Yeah, we have a really high trust in the society, and we have very high rates. So that's why we could do it probably as well. But we see that we want to do more of it, but we still have the other programs as well.
And you have so much money to work with.
Yeah, and the other keyword, trust of the society, of course. There was a question, half field.
Hello, hi. Ferdinand Koenig from the EU office in Sarajevo, Bosnia-Herzegovina. I just wanted to take up a point made by Marina Zetz, which, and I paraphrase somewhat, but saying that we need to have someone to blame. We need to know who is at fault. And this is also actually something that the colleague earlier in the first question pointed to as well. And it's something that we, of course, all the time when we're asked is, who is at fault here? Now, I'd be really interested in your opinion. Surely in such a polarized environment as exists in the Western Balkans, actually pointing fingers is counterproductive, because the people you're pointing fingers at will get all their networks to fire back, and then you get into a slanging match, which actually means that the solutions are not discussed. So actually, surely it's in the Western Balkans rather than in, say, Scandinavia, where constructive journalism has its most potential.
Yeah, that's why I say we're not political, because we don't point fingers in that manner. And we try to write as many articles so they have different points of view in order not to make it a debate program and a fighting match and something like that. So it is very complex, and these are all the issues that we have to work around in order to, in the end of the day, inform properly our audience. So I understand the question, but it's something that we're trying to, I don't know, make it all happen at the same time. But still, if it's an institution, I think you have every right as a journalist to say, oh, this institution is not doing, that's what I meant, not personally, this, I don't know, John Doe doesn't do his work. But in the other sense that this institution is not working properly, this is what I meant when I said pointing fingers. Yeah.
Is there any immediate question? Otherwise, we are at already some minutes over time. Otherwise, I would wrap up here. And so close this panel, please. A very last applause for the great panelists. If this was TV, having produced a great chunk of TV, no, but a very animated debate, and I think what is, from my perspective, what is nice in this sort of debates is that people tend to actually listen and to answer the questions, which is different from many politicians' debate. Anyway, in a few minutes, there will be the EU Investigative Journalism Awards, to which I invite you all to stay, because it's about a lot of interesting projects. As you probably know, the EU Investigative Journalism Awards aim to celebrate and promote the outstanding achievements of journalists, as well as improve the visibility and the quality of journalism here in the region. And there is, and I hope that I'm still on, an important detail for tomorrow morning, as many of you have early flights going out of Tirana. This is really a logistical detail you all have to know, absolutely. Please, we ask you to check out at the hotel, whether you be at another hotel or here, before the panels later. And you can leave, of course, your luggage there, or even in the transfer bus, and to come here with already being checked out, because that allows you to stay until the very end of the debates tomorrow. And also another thing for tomorrow. Today you signed a list for your presence. You'll have to do that again tomorrow. So that is, I think, about the technical details. I, for my side, sign out for today. I've spoken more than enough, I think, and I wish you all a great evening, a wonderful award ceremony, and see you back tomorrow. Thank you.
Names. Hello, everybody. I don't know if you can hear me. Welcome back to this last session, which is also very, very important for today, which are the award ceremony for the EU Investigative Awards. This is a program that started from 2015, and its main aim is to promote investigative journalism and, of course, to strengthen the visibility of quality journalism in the 6 EU Western Balkan countries and also in Turkey. Here today will be almost EU. Today we'll deliver altogether differently from the past years, the awards for the all 6 Western Balkan countries together. And we are very happy that this will serve as an opportunity for you to meet each other and to perhaps have the opportunity to exchange more about challenges, but also impact that you have had through your work. Before going in more details about how the ceremony will be organized, I'll give the floor to Ms. Michaela Matuela, that is the acting Western Balkan Director for Western Balkan at DGNIR. Again, from this morning for whoever join us later. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. It's a pleasure to be back. And first of all, congratulations on what I understand, talking to some of you for a very interesting discussion throughout the day. And I cannot think of a better conclusion of the day than through this award ceremony. Christina has already explained the background, the history, the objective of the award. Let me just confirm from our side. This is really a very important instrument through which we want to recognize, praise, and of course, promote and support investigative journalists. The importance of it cannot be emphasized enough. There are, and we will see through the very impressive list of colleagues that have been considered let's say deserving this important award, that we have a lot of very highly professional journalists that also have shown determination, courage, because that's what it takes, of course, for investigative journalists to uncover maybe sometimes difficult realities, but of course that need to be told. And that's a very important contribution for the democratic processes in all of our countries. So very happy to be here for this ceremony and looking very much forward to meeting a lot of these very well-deserving colleagues. Thanks.
Thank you. And to be honest, even in the past years, when we organized the local ceremonies, I feel the obligation to do this explanation that, and I know even from this year, that all the juries in all the countries had very, very difficult tasks. Yes, the journalists that will be awarded today have done a great job, but there are many others who deserve our recognition. And even though the awards for Turkey will be announced later on this month, I still need to recognize their courage, especially in the difficult situation that they are. As we said, this is the first time that the ceremony is
being done for the 6 Western Balkan countries together. So unfortunately, we'll not have enough time to hear and to present all the jury members, but also to give the opportunity to all the winners. But I think the ceremony, the reception that will come after that will give us that opportunity. As this is a regional event, we have selected or chosen only 3 of the jury members to present the awards, 2 countries per each. In each country, as you know from the past year, are 3 winning stories with 1 or more journalists, as you will learn very soon. So the jury members that will announce the awards that will be handled by Ms. Matuela for today are Albana Kasape, journalist at BBC World Service Radio, that will announce the winning articles for Albania and Kosovo. Mr. Zlatan Mosic, who is the media freedom officer at OSCE office in Bosnia and Herzegovina, who will announce the winners for Bosnia and Montenegro, and Ms. Milica Saric, who is the executive director for Center for Investigative Journalism team in Serbia, that will announce the winners for North Macedonia and Serbia. We'll start with Albana Kasape, and not only because Albania is the host country, but also alphabetically, it's your turn first. And I'll handle to you now to announce. And of course, if we can come this way, that will enable us to make the photo opportunity with the winners first of each country and later on with all the winners together. Albana.
Good evening. It's a great honor to be here. So the winners for Albania, starting from the 3rd prize, the winner is Ola Mitra. These are very long titles, but her story was a very good investigative journalism piece on this plant of chromium in Bučica, the environmental issues, and that kind of were linked with her story. The whole point was the chromium in this plant was extracted without a proper environmental permit. So a very important story about the environment. Congratulations. The winner for the 2nd prize is Dorian Kodra. Again, a very good investigative piece on political journalism. It will sound very Albanian, but for those in the know, there's a kind of a long title there. How is Real India monitoring phone and ID numbers, workplaces, and confidential data of some million voters in Tirana, the capital of Albania? So a very political story. So congratulations. And the winner of the 1st prize is Claudiana Lala. She wins this award for a 2nd time. And her story is titled Albanian Crime Story, Hostage to the Cocaine Supply Chain. Congratulations.
No, if you can, all together. It is quite a complex choreography today. Thank you. And
I've also had the great honor, although I was not a member of the jury for Kosovo, but with great pleasure to announce the winners. Again, we'll start from the 3rd prize. We've got Besnik Boletini and Javid Drenori for their story Daily Contamination. The winner for the 2nd prize is Besnik Krasniqi Another environmental story and politics as well. Let's clean the budget. Only men from Kosovo this year. The first prize goes to Kreshni Gashi, Visar Prebeza, the Behar Mustafa for their North File investigative piece.
Congratulations to all, and thank you, Albana, for announcing the awards. And I'll invite now the other member of the jury, that is Mr. Zlatan Music, to announce the winners for Bosnia and then Montenegro. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Christina, for the announcement. I will take a second so I can get all the information we want. So for Bosnia and Herzegovina, the third place goes to journalist Adna Zilic for her story, Police Uniform Requirements Tailored for Private Businessmen. Just be careful here on the steps. The second place for the EU award goes to Amarildo Gutic for his story, Battle for the Political Commissioner. And the first place goes to the team of journalists Mubarak Asani and Jelena Jevtic for their story, The Boss and Her Black Shirt Mob. Congratulations to all the winners. I also have the pleasure of announcing winning journalists from Montenegro. And for the third place, the EU award goes to Vladimir Otasevich and Marko Veshovic for The Secrets of Crime, the murder of Duško Jovanović. The second prize goes to Đurđa Radulović for the series of stories on wildfire season in Montenegro. And finally, the first prize goes to journalist Mihailo Jovović for the series of stories on secret flights of the president of Montenegro, Milo Đukanović. Again, congratulations to all the winners. Yes, we have 2 microphones. And good luck to you all. Thank you for your efforts. And thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, I'll invite Ms. Milita Saric to announce the awards for North Macedonia and Serbia.
Going way down. Okay. Hi, everybody. So it's my pleasure tonight to announce both North Macedonia and Serbia winner. And let's start. Third prize from North Macedonia goes to, please have some patience because these are like 4 names. Snežana Lupevska-Sozen, Miomir Serafinović, Biljana Nikolovska, and Emilia Misirljevski. And they are awarded for penalties for traffic accidents with fatal consequences by necessity, not by law. It's an amazing story. Actually, more stories. Sorry, multiple. Congratulations. Okay, second prize goes to Miroslava Burns. Yeah. And these are serious stories about case of Jadzvea Poska, woman in labor that lost her uterus, ovary, and kidney in Struga hospital. Those were really important stories on health issues in Macedonia. So congratulations. And the first prize goes to Irena Karevska. She is awarded for Rashkovsky Bota software for traffic fines, which the Ministry of Interior does not know about and certainly does not plan to use. Congratulations. Let's just give them a moment. Okay. Okay, for Serbia, there is a bit different situation. We have 2 winners of third prize. So let me announce it by the order I have it here. It's the first winner of third prize is Sasha Dragojlo. And he is awarded for people smuggling, money, violence, and ties to the security services. Congratulations. Second, third award goes to Aleksandar Đorđević and Miodrag Marković. Okay. I guess, Alexander, you're taking for Miodrag Marković as well. Okay, perfect. And that's for the for a series of stories on corrupt mechanism in the electric power industry of Serbia. Okay, to the second prize. Second prize goes to an amazing investigation of our colleague Jovana Gligorijević. And that's for conspiracy of silence lasted for a long time. Sexual harassment at the Petnica Science Center. Again, first prize goes to big team. 4 names, please have patience. It's Stevan Dečinović, Milica Vojinović, Bojana Pavlović, and Bojana Jovanović from Krik. They are awarded for a series of articles on Serbian gang led by Veljko Belivuk.
Please have some more patience. Congratulations to you all. But as we need to have a photo opportunity with all the winners. I will invite all the winners for all the countries to join the floor.
Yeah. And also, I invite all of you to read the winning stories, and you can find the summary here, but you can also access all the full stories that were awarded today. Thank you all, and I invite all of you to join the reception and to have the opportunity to exchange with winners, but also with each other. Thank you very much. The reception will be at the restaurant here at Rockner. Thank you.